Hello, we're continuing our conversation about how the Cold War begins. We are in the same textbook. You can find this at the National Emergency Library online. It is a newer edition than this, but it is mostly the same content. It might just be arranged a little differently. So, last time we talked about the differences in the goals of the Soviet Union and the United States after the war. And today we're going to kind of talk about how that plays out politically. So, meeting the challenge. President Truman was not the only world leader who believed that Stalin had aspirations towards world domination. Winston Churchill also spoke out forcefully against the Soviet Union on March 5th in 1946. He gave an important speech at Fulton College in Missouri, Truman's home state. Referring to a map of Europe, Churchill noted that an iron curtain had descended across the continent. East of that Iron Curtain, the Soviet Union was gaining more control by installing communist governments and police states and by crushing political and religious dissent. In addition, Churchill feared that the Soviets were attempting to spread communism to Western Europe and East Asia. The only solution, Churchill said, was for the United States and the other democratic countries to stand firm. Truman faces a crisis. Truman shared Churchill's beliefs. Born in a small town in Missouri, Truman had been too poor to attend college. He was the only president in the 20th century with no college education. He worked on the family farm, fought in France during World War I, and eventually began a political career. His life was a testament to honesty, integrity, hard work, and a willingness to make difficult decisions. The buck stops here was his motto as president. It meant that the person sitting in the Oval Office had the obligation to face problems head on, and make hard decisions. In 1947, no issue was more weighty than the growing crisis between the United States and the Soviet Union. After the war, a number of European and Asian countries were struggling against communist movements supported by the Soviets. In particular, the governments of Greece and Turkey were battling communist forces seeking to gain control. Greece and Turkey needed aid, and in 1947, the United States was the only country with the resources to help them. The Truman Doctrine opposes communist expansion. On March 12, 1947, President Truman described the plight of the Greek and Turkish people. The fight they were waging, he said, was the fight that all free people had to confront. Truman requested money from Congress to support free peoples who are resisting attempted subjugation by armed minorities or by outside pressures. If the United States retreated into isolationism, he warned, the peace of the world and the welfare of the nation would be in danger. Congress responded by voting to give $400 million in aid for Greece and Turkey. President Truman's promise to aid nations struggling against communist movements became known as the Truman Doctrine, and it set a new course for American foreign policy. Checkpoint. What events caused President Truman to propose what became known as the Truman Doctrine? What we have happening is there are a couple communist risings throughout the world, in Greece and Turkey in particular, where you have communist forces that represent a relative minority in those countries fighting against the democratic governments. And the fear was that if the communists took control in those areas, it might lead to more of those uprisings elsewhere. So Truman wants to make sure that we do all that we can to prevent communism from spreading. All right, we're going to end here, and hope I will talk to you guys later, and stay safe. Bye.